This is Plant-Based Briefing, How Contract Farming Makes Big Corporations Rich and Family Farmers Broke. Part 1 by Seth Millsetin at sentientmedia.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate articles on plant-based and vegan living with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And I'm pleased to have permission from Sentient to share their content. So now let's get to today's Plant-Based Briefing. How Contract Farming Makes Big Corporations Rich and Family Farmers Broke. Part 1 by Seth Millsetin at sentientmedia.org. 90% of all chicken farmed in the U.S. is the product of contract farming. The U.S. poultry industry took in over $70 billion last year, with industry leader Tyson reporting $53 billion in revenue for chicken and more. The vast majority of farmers didn't see much of that profit at all. Thanks to what's known as contract farming, many of the people who run these farms find themselves underpaid, debt-ridden, and broke, with no foreseeable exit strategy. Meanwhile, the large agribusinesses with whom they've contracted rake in the profits. Under the contract farming model, large meat processors like Tyson and Perdue deliver animals and feed to individual farmers who raise them in their own facilities before returning them to the processors. The farmers have to abide by the processor's guidelines in raising the animals, and their payment varies depending on the performance of other growers in the area. Fundamentally, you're getting paid for time and space. James McDonald, research professor of agricultural economics at the University of Maryland and former staffer at the USDA's Economic Research Service, tells Sentient, "You, the grower, are providing the housing, significant capital investment, and labor management, and you're most likely these days also paying for utilities." While all sorts of agricultural commodities are farmed via contract, the model is practically the only game in town when it comes to poultry. According to the USDA, in 2020, 88% of all poultry in the U.S. and 99.5% of all meat chickens are farmed under contract. Given that over half of all chicken in the U.S. is processed by just 4 companies, Tyson, Perdue, Pilgrim's Pride, a division of JBS, and Sanderson Farms, these contract farmers are usually contracting with one of those companies. Contract farming may sound like a good economic model, but as many farmers say, it's left them debt-ridden. How does contract farming work? In livestock farming, production contracts are agreements between individual farmers and the large agribusinesses that process and sell the meat. These agribusinesses, often referred to as integrators due to their adoption of vertically integrated production models, agree to provide animals and feed to the farmer and to pay the farmer for raising those animals for a certain period of time. The farmer, in turn, agrees to raise the animals in accordance with the integrator's guidelines and to give the animals back to the integrator once they reach slaughter weight. Under production contracts, farmers don't buy or own the animals they're raising and aren't selling them to the meat processors. They are simply being paid by the integrator to perform the service of raising the animals before they're slaughtered. Exactly how much contract farmers get paid is a complicated question that we'll dive into later. In any production contract, there's a set of inputs that are being provided by the contractor, or the processor in this case, and there's a set that's being provided by the grower, McDonald says. And that's why production contracts tend to be pretty thick, because there's a lot of detail on who's contributing what. In theory, production contracts offer a number of protections and upsides for producers. Farmers who produce under contract receive guaranteed regular payments for the length of the contract and thus don't have to worry about marketing their product or finding buyers for it. They also don't have to source their animals or buy feed, as both are provided by the integrator, which both saves them money and shields them from market fluctuations in the price of animals and feed. The problems with production contracts. On paper, contract farming provides farmers with a regular, reliable source of income. In practice, contract farming has left many farmers broke, destitute, and devastated. Here's why. Startup capital. Under production contracts, integrators own the animals, while farmers own the facilities in which the animals are raised. In a 2015 segment on contract farming linked here, John Oliver dryly characterized this arrangement as one in which you own everything that costs money, we own everything that makes money. He wasn't wrong. In 2016, the average poultry farm had 4 chicken houses, and the average cost of building a chicken house was $300,000, according to Rural Advancement Foundation International, or RAFI. This means that would-be contract farmers needed to invest over $1 million of their own money before raising a single bird. The price has only increased since then. In 2023, Southern Ag Today reported that building a new poultry farm can cost upwards of $5 million, as many new farms are expected to have 8 chicken houses instead of 4. And none of these expenses includes the cost of the land itself, just the facilities. A typical 4-house facility in Maryland now is going to cost you about $2 million exclusive of the cost of the land, McDonald says. That's a major investment. Needless to say, most people don't have a spare $1 million lying around, so farmers often take out enormous loans in order to build these facilities. This is the first issue with production contracts. Farmers who sign them incur massive amounts of debt before they've raised a single animal. It's no accident that in the U.S., chicken farmers have a higher debt-to-asset ratio than any other type of farmer, according to the USDA. Ideally, these farmers would be able to pay off their debt through the money they earn from the contract. The problem is that the length of the contract, that is, the amount of time in which they're guaranteed to be paid by the integrator, is typically much shorter than the length of the mortgage on the production facilities. Mortgages are typically at least 10 years and often much longer. But as of 2022, 64% of production contracts for chicken farmers were 5 years or less, according to a poll commissioned by the National Chicken Council. Almost 1/3 of all contracts were signed on a flock-to-feed basis, which means they only lasted 5 to 10 weeks, the average length of time needed to raise a flock to slaughter weight, and had to be continually renewed. Only 13.4% of contracts lasted for 10 years or more. You just listened to How Contract Farming Makes Big Corporations Rich and Family Farmers Broke, Part 1 by Seth Millsetin at sentientmedia.org. And I'm Marian Erickson, your host. Tune in tomorrow for the second half of this episode, where you'll hear about the unreliable, insufficient payments to farmers, canceled contracts, and contractually obligated animal suffering. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.